Okay, hello, good evening. My name is Jackie Coolidge. I co-chair the Redistricting Reform Committee for the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County. Welcome to tonight's program, Redistricting in Montgomery County. Who's drawing the lines? Our panelists will give us insight into how the council districts are being determined in the county, with particular emphasis on how the needs and concerns of county residents, neighborhoods, and communities of interest are being addressed. As you listen to the presentations, please remember that the Montgomery County Council redistricting process is entirely separate from the redistricting processes for state legislative and U.S. congressional districts. The state level processes are also being conducted this fall under the guidance of two different commissions, one set up by the governor and the other by the Maryland General Assembly in competition with each other. But first, some housekeeping details. This webinar is presented by the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County, Maryland. The meeting is being recorded and is being streamed live to Facebook. The recording will be made available at a later date on our YouTube channel, and we will have the links for those in the chat box. All participants in the meeting will be muted during panelist presentations. The two speakers will make their presentations and a Q&A session will follow. We encourage you to ask questions. Click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Type your question into the box and hit send. We will answer as many questions as time allows. The program is scheduled to end at 8:30 p.m. Now I'm pleased to introduce tonight's speakers. MARIANA CORDIER is the chair of the Montgomery County Commission on Redistricting. She's an attorney and founding member of CORDIER Law Office in Rockville and has over 19 years of experience litigating civil and criminal cases in state and federal courts. She's a member of the Maryland Hispanic Bar Association, and Ms. CORDIER also served on the Governor's Commission on Hispanic Affairs from 2004 to 2012, and in the Montgomery County Latin American Advisory Group from 2008 to 2013. Ms. CORDIER graduated from Washburn University School of Law and earned a bachelor's degree in political science from American University. Now, full disclosure, I applied for the County Redistricting Commission too, and I was on the same panel of interviewees as MARIANA. And when I listened to her answers, I said to myself, she's going to get on the commission. She should get on the commission. She did get on the commission and she was elected chair. And that's a good thing because it is a tremendous amount of work and they have been doing a tremendous job so far. Our other speaker will be Mr. Bruce ADELSON, who is a nationally recognized independent expert on redistricting from Montgomery County, who's currently advising the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. He is the CEO of Federal Compliance Consulting and is a former senior attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. During his tenure at the Department of Justice, he led reviews and analyses of redistricting plans proposed by multiple states during the 2000 redistricting cycle. He holds a bachelor's degree in international studies from the Johns Hopkins University and graduated from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. More disclosure, I am also an alum of Johns Hopkins University. I also did international studies. We were the same year. We didn't know each other. In fact, only recently when we started talking, we realized we had the same major, same year. We must have been in the same freshman classes, but we have no recollection of ever having spoken to one another. So small world, but not quite small enough. Okay, back to the program. It is my pleasure to invite MARIANA CORDIER to begin tonight's program.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your guests on this program and audience. So this is going to be fun.
Okay.
Do you want me to go ahead and go right into the program?
Sure. And I'm going to call up your presentation.
Great.
And I will, you just tell me when you want me to click.
Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. Just let's get right into it because I'm sure everybody's very anxious to know about redistricting. Redistricting is something that we do every 10 years, and it's based on the information that we get from the census. And so this year, it accumulated the census information over 2020, and the information usually is distributed to the states sometime in the late summer. Unfortunately, this year it was late due to some complications in litigation, and so the information did not come available to us and our tool that we would use until mid-September. But the good news is we've got it and we're working very hard. We are 5 districts, and we are now going to have to draw 7 districts as a result of the referendum that got passed. And so we are drawing the lines, to be very, very clear with everyone, for the county council. We're not drawing districts or precincts for the state. So if we can go to the next slide. So this is a little bit of information about the sizes of the districts according to the census. They are going to be equal, somewhat as approximately as we can, equal in population, and that's 150,000. There are some ground rules that we have established, but to give you a heads up of what that is right now, we are looking for compact districts that are contiguous. We are avoiding weird drawings and designs, and we're taking into consideration the importance of the ethnic and racial groups, the communities of interest, and keeping those populations together and not splitting them apart. Next slide. Yeah, there's there should be the commission's ground rules is the next slide.
Okay,
there we go. All right, so the commission ground rules for mapping. I just kind of mentioned the compactness and contiguity. The definitions for those are up. Also as important is equal population. It's 150,000 approximately. We might be plus or minus in some of the districts that will get drawn. We don't know until we have the maps finalized. The importance of minority representation has to be taken into consideration. Preservation of counties and other political subdivisions. You know, the commission just had a really important vote in the last meeting about keeping Rockville and Gaithersburg together. They're 2 municipalities. There was a consideration of splitting them apart or keeping them together. And it was all based upon whether or not it was possible to keep them together because of the population. And when the census information was provided, we realized that we could keep them together and not split them apart. So that was voted on and done in the last meeting. And then this is super important. This is one that has caused controversy and litigation in the past, and that is the preservation of communities of interest. For people to understand what community of interest are, they are people that have the same, you know, a philosophy or race or, you know, concerns. Like Poolsville is more of an agricultural community. They want to preserve their the grouping. East County is African American predominantly. They want to keep their community of interest together. So there's a variety of reasons and definitions for what makes up a community of interest, but it's important for the commission and all commissions to take those into consideration. The next slide, please. The planning department, this gives you the information I just gave you. We got the information on September 15th. If you can go to the next slide.
Right.
2 slides.
There we go.
All right, so that's the information that I just went through in the beginning about the census information. If we can go to the next slide. All right, so how can you help us? And I'm talking to the audience. Please let us know if you're part of a community of interest. You know, if you have a concern, if you want to give us information to take into consideration as we are doing the drafting of the maps. I have to tell you that this right now is crucial. The maps that the commissioners are putting together will be due soon. So if you want your voice heard, now is the time to drop your concern in a form that is provided on the website for the Montgomery County Commission on Redistricting. Here on this slide, you can see the link www.montgomerycountymaryland.gov/council/BCC/redistricting. So please make sure, if you have a concern, to make sure we know about it and share it. There will be a public meeting in the future. I don't have the exact date yet. If we can go down to the next slide, you can see population growth graph. There you go, 2010, 2020. You can see that almost 100,000 people. We are 1 million something in the Montgomery County, according to the census. All right, so the next top regions of and countries of origin. You can see there that the top country or a region that has grown in our county is El Salvador, India, China, Ethiopia, Guatemala. So these are communities that we are looking to see where they are, and are they together, or are they spread out, so that we know that we are not dividing anybody up. To the next slide, you can see here the communities that have increased in population, and the non-white Hispanic designation. That is not created by the commission. That is a designation or a category that's been created by the census. Not exactly crazy about it, but that's what it is. And so you can see that that population is coming down, it's less, and the minority populations are growing. If we go to the population of by place, that's the next slide. So the more dark the purple dots are, you can see is where the majority of the population is. And so you see the pockets really are along the 270 corridor. You can see Tacoma Park is dense. You can see Silver Spring in that area. Those are the denser parts. If you look at the top of the District 2, the end of the westernmost portion of District 1, you can see it's the most sparsely populated, but it's also the rural, the agricultural reserve. So that's why that looks like that. Although I will note, for those who are interested and are really concerned about Up County, that Germantown, Clarksburg has seen growth. Problem is that the growth that they have seen in competition with Down County, there is a difference. If you will look then to growth by place, which is the next slide, then you can see that there is some similarity. I'll wait until the slide changes. There we go. So that's fine. We can skip it. It's you can see that it's very similar. The growth in place, the growth clusters, to that of the population. It kind of tracks. The next slide will show you the median age. So there are a lot of people who have a lot of questions about the ages of the population. And so you can see by the size of the dots, the larger it is, it's 67 to 79. The smaller dots are 29 to 41 years of age. I have gotten questions in the past, and I'll answer it right now. It's not in the slide, and you will not see it anywhere. There is no way for us to tell you how much of the population growth or the whole population of Montgomery County is or is not a United States citizen. That is not part of the census, and that information is not included, so we don't know. The Montgomery, for the next slide, Montgomery County Census Track 1990 to 2019. Tract sizes are different. Larger equals less populated, wider and less dense farther up county, less racial predominance down county, eastern and along the I-270 corridor, generally becoming more diverse, no racial predominance, which I think that's pretty important because we're pretty mixed. And the tracts becoming minority majority. It's another term that is used by the census. All right, so if we go to looking at predominant racial or ethnic groups, you can see what 1990 looked like. And now you can go to the next slide and see what 2000 looked like. And now you can see what 2019 looked like. So you see the changes, and then you can see what, let's see, so that is according to the census tract. And then you can see a comparison between 1990 and 2019 overlap. There you go. And then if you go to the next slide, you will see the 2019 equity focus areas, and that's an overlay on the map. So these are overlays that we will look at and do as we're drawing the lines for the districts. And so these are points that the tool that we're using helps us to make sure that we are aware of these groups and issues. So overall, in the next slide, the demographic changes summary is that over 65, age 65 population is up and rising. Our population is getting older. Under 5 population is falling, as are the birth rates. Race and ethnicity, there's an increasing diversity, but geographic segregation along racial lines. Income, race are correlated and share the same demographic patterns. So the last slide, I kind of went through this quickly so that if people have questions, I can answer them. You know, what communities should be located in a single district? What communities should be in separate districts? Are the boundaries between districts that you would recommend? So these are the things that we're asking you, the public, to share with us. And again, there's the link. We have a meeting. The September 23rd meeting already occurred, and that's the meeting where the vote occurred with regard to Gaithersburg and Rockville. Our next meeting tentatively is set for October 6th. And then from there on forward, I believe our next meeting would be after that, the 13th. And I believe the public meeting is tentatively scheduled for October 20th. Yeah, the meetings are on Facebook Live. And the one public meeting, I believe, will be maybe in person. So stay tuned, check our website, and you will get the information and updates there.
Good. Thank you so much, Mariana. I think that we are still hoping that Bruce will be able to join us, but he's not available yet. So we may be in a position then to just go into question and answer specifically with Mariana. Bruce was going to give us a broader discussion of redistricting issues, and Mariana is our main resource specifically for Montgomery County. So I think that I will turn this over to our Q&A manager, Mr. Max Shu, and see if we have some questions for Mariana. I have one question we can start with before Max starts to take some of the others. And Mariana, if you could just explain a little more what the schedule is. As I recall, The commission is supposed to deliver a final report and recommended map November 15th.
That's
So
correct.
if you could give us an idea of, what the planned schedule is between now and then, I think that would be very interesting.
Sure. So in our last meeting, we finalized that the deadline for commissioners to submit maps to the rest of the commissioners to look at and be able to see the fine detail, because with the overlaying of maps, you want to make sure that you don't inadvertently, split a neighborhood or a group that is showing to be, very compact and contiguity. So all the commissioners have agreed to provide to each other the maps as of October 4th, with the idea of presenting and voting on these maps somewhat on the 6th of October. And that would give the public the first view of any maps and an opportunity to review them and think about them, to then comment on them at the public meeting that we would have. And at first the idea was maybe the meeting would be on the 13th or the 20th. And so I can almost guarantee definitely the 20th. The preference is to give the community a little bit more time to look at the maps and understand them. And then once that happens, we would then vote the commission on the map that they want to send to the county council for review. There's a bit of debate on the commission about whether we're sending one or two maps. Like at the top number one map, and then maybe perhaps an alternative. And that's really dependent on how the maps turn out. I have to admit that the work so far is kind of showing that there's not a great big difference among the maps, that really by following the law and following the ground rules that we established, that is born from Supreme Court law and regulations and the rest from our charter, that we're kind of on point and a bipartisan, nonpartisan, if you will, way, and drawing these maps and taking everything into consideration. So, it may be pretty straightforward, but you never know. So that's why we want community participation and such. So the final report will be provided on the 15th. The Wednesday after the 20th, I'm drawing a blank now what the date is when we will finalize the map, and we will also finalize the written report explaining the details about why the lines are the way they are. And so that everyone can understand if we had to compromise, or because some of the categories of how to draw the lines may conflict in our ground rules, and so then the commission would have to prioritize which one they feel is the most important. And if that happens, we need to explain that, and we need to explain, there's a matter in Gaithersburg where there is a shopping center that doesn't have any residents in it, so there's nobody voting there. So that's a little thing that if you watch the last meeting, you'll understand, but we'll put that in the report to make it clear to the county council. And then the county council, of course, will have their own meetings. They will have their own public forum and decide what map they are going to adopt.
Okay, very good. And just one last quick question, if I could. The public hearing where people will have their opportunity to comment on the map or maps, is that going to be virtual or in person? How will people be able to do that?
So that's a really good question. That was at first thought to be in person, and as far as I know, so far I think it's going to be virtual. If the county council is having virtual meetings and public meetings, then we are going to be virtual. They're not going to have us be in the building if they're not. So I think that, you know, everyone, because of the pandemic, and I have to emphasize that this has been a unique experience in redistricting, not only because we're adding 2 districts, but we're doing it during a pandemic where everything has been virtual. The commissioners have never met in person. So the challenges have been gigantic, but I think we've met the challenge to a large degree. And so I think it's going to be virtual.
Okay, Max, if you would handle the question and answer, that would be wonderful. I'm sure we've got a bunch.
Oh yes, yeah, we got quite a few here. So hi everyone. I'm my name is Max Xu, and I'll be the moderator for the Q&A session. As a reminder, we encourage everyone to ask questions. To do so, click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question into the box, and then hit send or return. We will answer as many questions as time allows, although because the second speaker isn't here, we probably will have a big block of time here. Just as a reminder, this program is scheduled to end at 8:30 p.m. And also, we will not be allowed to ask questions about actual district lines and how the districts will end up looking as a whole. So why don't we start off with the first question that I got or that we got in the middle of the presentation. So someone asked about how Rockville and Gaithersburg are going to be grouped together. So the person asked that Rockville and Gaithersburg border on the area of I-270 that is going to be affected by its expansion. However, they are they seem to be grouped or going to be grouped in one district with only one representative. So what is the rationale behind that?
I'm sorry, some message came up on my screen. So the Rockville Gaithersburg issue was debated at the last meeting. One of the commissioners is Bruce Golshin, who is a longtime mayor of Gaithersburg. And we had asked for community input with regard to Gaithersburg and Rockville. And the original concern that had been expressed was that the population growth in both municipalities would create a situation where it would exceed 150,000 and we would need to split them because of the population growth. But the 2 municipalities had expressed, one, a lack of concern as to whether or not it was grouped in with the other. And I believe it was, I want to say Gaithersburg, I think it was Gaithersburg that said that they didn't mind being grouped together and would prefer it. So we relied, the majority of the commission relied on the representations of the elected officials of both municipalities and with the expertise of the past mayor to determine whether or not, because it would affect how the maps are drawn and how many maps we would need to look at if we kept them together or we separated them. And it just seemed to make more sense to keep Gaithersburg and Rockville together. Because if you look at them together, they are both rather urban and have similar issues. And so it looked like it would be compact, it would be contiguity. It just checked a lot of the boxes off. So the commissioners at the last meeting, and you can watch the Facebook Live meeting and the debate. It was a robust debate. There was a vote. There were 4 that opposed, and the remaining commissioners voted for moving forward with drawing maps that had Gaithersburg and Rockville together.
Okay, great, thanks. So someone else asked, are you trying to keep county precincts whole, or will you be splitting precincts, or are precinct lines in general changing as well?
So I can't speak necessarily for the Board of Elections. It is my understanding, though, that the Board of Elections may be redesigning some of the precincts, although we are presented with what it is now. So we're going to try not to predict in the future what that might look like, because then we could be debating that forever, and we have not as much time as we would in the past to debate this if we had gotten the information July, August. So I think we took the perspective of taking the map, the layers of the precincts as we have it now. And it is our goal to try not to split up the precincts. But as we work with the maps, if that becomes an issue, then we may seek some guidance with regard to the option of perhaps not keeping all of the precincts together. But we would like to try to keep everything, together as much as possible, and not get into splitting anything apart if we can, because that's important.
Okay. Next up, we have this question. How can you tell whether you are dividing a community? I'm assuming they mean community of interest. The maps you showed do not show where neighborhoods and cities are, or where towns are located as well.
So don't believe the public is privy to the tool that we have, but I do know that MIT and a couple of other organizations have redistricting applications that have census information in it, and you can try and draw a map. And if you look at those, or if you look at the maps that are available on the County Park and Planning Commission, you can see the breakdown of the county into pretty nitty-gritty detail, including neighborhoods and streets and all of that. So our mapping tool does provide us the ability to pull it out the view and see it without too much detail, or pull it in and see the minute detail. So that's why I wanted the commissioners to provide their maps early enough that then we can look at that map in our mapping tool, and we can zoom in and see if a map that someone's proposing and we might want to join is in fact a map that we can live with, because it's not splitting up communities of interest or neighborhoods or anything else.
Okay, thanks for that information. Next up, could you expand on what the commission is doing to doing to ensure that the views of the residents of historically underserved communities are sought? What measures did you undertake to provide outreach about this commission, provide background and education, and to seek the input of low-income residents, racial, ethnic, and linguistic minorities, and other communities of interest?
So we were lucky enough to have awesome staff from the county council help us put together, for instance, the slideshow that you just saw. That same slideshow is in Spanish. I don't know if any other languages were translated. And we went out, and I say we, multiple commissioners did presentations to anyone and everyone that asked for us to do so. We created a contact with one of the commissioners, Samuel Statland, to organize us and the public to be able to do this outreach. I took it as a personal obligation to not only reach out to the community to get the community to participate, but I also wanted to make sure that we were all on the same playing field in understanding what redistricting is and what the law requires. And I didn't want to be that Maryland, that gerrymander. So I can't do anything about the rest of the state, but with regard to Montgomery County, I thought that if we put together ground rules that were compliant with the law, with Supreme Court and everything, and that's why you see the ground rules that was in that slide, we all agreed on those ground rules. So we are all working off the same rule book, if you will, and we shared that with every single community that we presented to, and that included the African American community, the Hispanic community, any community, church. We went to churches. We went to up county, down county, east county, Rockville, Poolsville. I mean, you name it, we covered it. And that was our attempt to make sure we reach out to everyone. On September 29th, which is only a couple of days away, is the deadline for any requests for future presentations. And fortunately, we're just running out of time, and the commissioners really need to be focusing on working on the maps and not doing presentations. But if you slip in and make a request prior to the 29th, then you may very well get a presentation about how we're doing this in your local group, community, whatever it is.
Okay, great. Thank you. So next, we have what sounds like a bit of a suggestion, I guess. So this person says, I would love to select my representatives instead of the other way around, i.e. gerrymandering. When I see community of interest as a criterion, it sounds a bit like political party. Why not include as a criteria competitiveness of the district, that is, minimize safe districts? I understand that this is more relevant for statewide redistricting than for a county, but just a suggestion otherwise.
So community of interest is defined by the Supreme Court. It's not defined by anybody else. And so that is how that came to be. The requirement to take it into consideration. The community interest, I've never seen it defined by party, and it doesn't mean that it can't be. I don't know, to be honest with you. But the idea is that when you look at the maps, you'll see that, for instance, in East County is a predominantly African American community. And so why would you split that up unless you're trying to dilute that population's vote? And so, and that's what's against the law and not constitutional. So that is why community of interest is seen that way. This commission is made up of Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated, independents. Full disclosure, I'm an independent. And we have all worked pretty well together. And I'm pretty proud of that. And, you know, we hear the concerns regardless of party, and we take them all into consideration. So nobody is getting a leg up above anybody else. We're really following the numbers, following the census information, and it's playing out pretty well in that sense. I mean, you know, Bruce is a Republican, and, you know, more than half the time he and I are voting together on things. So that's just to give you an example. And also with the Democrats. So when you have the Democrats and the Republicans voting together, that's a great thing to see in today's atmosphere.
Yes, yeah, I certainly think a lot of people would agree with that. So going off of that, somebody asked, can you tell us something about the membership of the commission?
So the commission, you can look at on our website the name of all the commissioners and their backgrounds and what district they come from. The makeup is, I think the council picked people, up county and down county, east, west, north, south. We're 11 commissioners. We are evenly matched, I think. So if you want to know specifically about us, you can look on there. I'm specifically from Potomac, so and I'm an independent. Some people are new to the county. So you have one, I think at least one commissioner, I believe, who's new to the county and as not as familiar as the rest of us. I grew up in the county. I grew up in Montgomery County, and I went to Wooten High School. Shout out for the Patriots.
Nice. Okay, great. So somebody asked, does the council, the county council, have the power to change the recommendations of the commission, or must it just vote yes or no?
The county council has the right to accept our map, reject our map, or tweak our map. So, I don't know what they're going to do. They're the elected officials. At the end of the day, they've got your vote and they've got your say. They're your representatives. But we're going to present them the best that we've got and how we can. And maybe we'll offer also a map if there's really a lot of debate and the commission's really split. I'm of the opinion that we should give them that alternative map too, so that everyone's voice is heard and the council can weigh it, debate it, and vote on it.
Okay. And then somebody else asked, perhaps this is a bit confrontational, but what good is it to have an independent redistricting commission if the county council can make their own map as well?
Well, I'm not a politician, so I can't, I can't answer that. Those are the rules as the charter of Montgomery County presents itself. And I'm not sure what the thought process was when they created this process and structure. This is the way it's always been. But I imagine that the core principle is that there should be some responsibility for the selection made, and the people that the community can hold responsible are their elected officials. We are appointed volunteers. We are not elected. So I think that the reason for that is because they wanted in the process, for whatever reason, believing it was best to protect the public by having the elected officials be the ones to make the final decision.
Okay, thank you. Next up, somebody came in a little bit late, so they're wondering if you are considering the number of party registrations when drawing precinct and district and other lines.
So to be clear, we're not drawing any precinct lines. So we are not looking at precinct registrations per se. Now, the mapping tool does have the precinct lines. So when we're layering the maps to figure out, drawing the lines, there's multiple categories of information that are considered. And so those things, depending on the commissioner and who's drawing the maps, we'll be looking at different factors and determining their maps. I can't talk to you about or tell you what the maps are looking like, because to be honest with you, October 4th is the deadline and we haven't seen all the maps. So I don't know. I know that the commissioners are working hard at it, all of them, and that there's been some debate, but nothing's been decided on. Nothing has been voted on except for keeping Rockville and Gaithersburg together. That's the only thing we've voted on.
Okay, great. So someone asked, will the public be invited to submit draft maps?
So the public has, some folks have submitted proposed maps, and for the commissioners to consider, and by no way in any way would that be rejected. So if you have a map you want to propose, or just an area that you want to bring attention to, there is a way to do that. Go to our website. There's a form you can fill out, and emails. So you're welcome to do so. There's nothing prohibiting that.
Okay, great. Next up, we have a couple of questions from one of our League of Women Voters members. First up, do incarcerated populations get factored into drawing the districts?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
It's a simple
Sweet and
question.
simple.
That's
Yeah,
that,
sweet and
so,
simple, yeah.
so that everyone understands that when the census downloads the information into the states and then to the local jurisdictions, one of the things that was considered and delayed is taking the prison population into consideration.
Okay. Well, we just had a question come in that says, does each commissioner create a separate map?
If you've been watching any of our meetings, you'll know that some of them are working on maps individually, and others are working in group. And I laugh, not because of that, but because some of us are more challenged in using the tool than others. So, those of us who are a little bit more challenged in finding the tool, it's a good tool. It's a great tool. It's not the tool, it's the user. Like, I'm a little challenged.
Right.
So, I'll team up with the other commissioners that are good at it. And so then I can point out what my concerns are, what I am looking at, and they'll, help me to do that. Some of them are really good at doing it on their own. There was a debate on the 23rd at our meeting about perhaps proposing a rule that a commissioner to limit how many maps we would get, instead of getting 11 maps, getting the commissioners to at least team up, 2 people team up, and try to come up with maps so that we limit how many maps, because we're crunched for time, but we want to give everyone an opportunity to be heard. So we're trying to find the middle of the road for that, and we're still working on that. So stay tuned.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and as always, teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes us better, definitely.
Right.
Particularly when you have different people from different parts of the county and different parties. That's great.
Yeah. So last up, have you noticed any major differences between drawing districts this year versus 10 years ago?
Oh, yeah. I wasn't part of the process 10 years ago, but they met in a room all together and chit-chatted and got to know each other. And, I don't know half of the commissioners. So, I know them virtually, but I haven't had a chance to meet them. And there is a certain dynamic about meeting in person that's very different in doing this virtually. But, as chair, I thought it really important to put together for each of the meetings. And, if you go back and you look in the earliest meetings, we had the Brennan Center give us the legal chat about how the laws of redistricting came about. Super well done and fascinating. If anyone really wants to understand the law and the history of it, check out that presentation, because it was really, really good. And in the course of those meetings and having Park and Planning come and give us a presentation about the county, so all the commissioners understood what up county is like and what down county is like in East County and Rockville and Gaithersburg and, you know, and all the rest that we did, it really gave us an opportunity not only to learn about the county so that we're all well-rounded about it, to learn about the law and be well-rounded about that, but also got to know each other. And so I think that has really developed relationships that commissioners can lean on each other, talk to each other, and work together to brainstorm to put together some great maps. And I think that our residents are going to be grateful in the end, and I think they're going to see some really great maps. So that's my hope and expectation based on the interaction that I've observed so far.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, after going through all the virtual meetings and the school and whatnot through the pandemic, that I think a lot of people would say that that's made these kinds of interactions harder. But I'm glad to hear that you've had access to all these resources and information. So I think I speak for everyone when I say we're looking forward to whatever the commission puts out.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and like I said, this is unprecedented times. This pandemic has, you know, really changed, you know, how we see things, how we treat each other, and I think that we will all be in the future considering some of these interactions in these venues and in this way, because it really gives an opportunity to focus on certain information and then worry about the personalities and such. So I think so far we've done all right. We're very different from past. And one of the biggest differences I think we have faced is that we have to add 2 new districts, which is unprecedented. And we have to do it in a way with a lot of anxiety from candidates and public, because they want to know where those 2 districts are going to land. And we know that, and we're taking that into consideration. And the conversation should not be about voter turnout, because that's not what redistricting is about. Redistricting is about creating the districts for your representation. Voter turnout is a completely different conversation. If people don't turn out, that's not about redistricting. That's something else.
Yeah, and actually, speaking about candidates, we did have a question about what is the process or slash timeline after you submit your plan. Will there be potentially an issue for candidates who need to announce for what district they would like to run for?
So it's my understanding, I'm not an expert though, so don't quote me if I'm wrong. It's my understanding that if you have declared your candidacy for a specific council seat and their drawing of the lines puts you in a different district, then your registration is just going to be switched over to the district that would apply. For those who have not registered yet and they're going to, I don't know exactly what the council deadline is for them to make the vote and determination of the district. So I don't know when that would be and how that's running up against the time frame for registering to run. I do know that it is running into a little bit of an issue for those who want to do public finance. But, you know, like I said, these are unprecedented times, and I don't think anyone could have predicted that this would happen. So we'll do the best that we can.
Right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up all the questions for tonight. So that's all the time that we have for the Q&A, at least with our current speaker. So I guess unless Bruce shows up, we might have to. Oh, Jackie.
Apparently he is coming. So while we're waiting for him to get on, I'm going to just throw one more question at MARIANA, and that is, if I recall earlier in the course of your hearings, there had been some mention of a criteria that would give consideration to the residents of the incumbent council members. And I was wondering if that is a criteria that has been accepted by the commission, rejected, or, if you could tell us about that one, I'd be very interested.
So when I drafted the ground rules, because I was the one that proposed the draft and then gave the commissioners an opportunity to review them and decide and vote, that was on the list. I was not proposing that, but I had seen that in certain states that had been included, and I wanted to give all the commissioners an opportunity. I didn't want to arbitrarily be the only one to come up with ground rules and say this is what it is without considering others that have been proposed, not necessarily that I would agree with. And that was one of them. And I think there's one other one, but we didn't, nobody liked it. But that one had just a little bit of a debate, and really that one was rejected by the commission. We felt that we don't owe incumbents anything. And it's hard enough to add 2 districts that could have caused an issue of, maybe, I don't want to call it gerrymandering, but drawing lines in a way that would not make sense. So we decided not to do that. So that is not a criteria, and nor are we looking at it or considering.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you so much, MARIANA. I really appreciate your joining us this evening. I think that we should be getting Bruce, but I don't see him on the list of participants yet. And so let me just say that I'm going to put something else out there for the audience, which is that if your neighborhood organization or church or civic association would like to host a Redistricting 101 presentation by the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County, you can contact our office. So we're going to put the email address and phone number in the chat box. And if you've been enjoying this program, then and you would like to learn more about the League of Women Voters here and our work in Montgomery County, you can find out more about us, including how to support our efforts at LWVMOCOMD.org. So now I see Bruce has been able to join us. This is great. So we're very interested to hear some of his experiences around the country, some of the general considerations or the common problems faced, challenges faced during redistricting. Bruce, I had already introduced you a little bit earlier, so I don't want to repeat that. I want to give you your time to make your presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Jackie, and thank you, and good evening, everybody. I am so sorry that I got the date mixed up on my calendar. It's ironic that we're talking about redistricting today because today was a very busy redistricting day. So let me talk a little bit about redistricting in general and the issues that confront various jurisdictions. The redistricting, as everybody knows, is tied to the decennial census. It's used to balance population that's either underpopulation or overpopulation of an ideal amount. There are all kinds of issues involving redistricting. There are issues that are relevant for state law, local law, but as I tell all the people I work with, federal law is supreme. What does that mean? That's the Voting Rights Act of 1965, as well as the US Constitution's one person, one vote requirement. So there are requirements for compact districts, depending on where you are, contiguous districts, meaning you can walk from one part of the district to another without leaving the district, following geographic boundaries, all kinds of things. But one of the things that, excuse me, is coming up a lot for me now with the Voting Rights Act is packing and cracking minority populations, meaning putting large numbers of minority people, Blacks, Hispanics, Asian Americans, Native Americans into one district beyond an amount by which they can elect candidates of choice. So that happens in many parts of the country where Black voters, for example, are assigned in significant numbers to a particular district, well above the amount that secures them their rights under the Voting Rights Act. And I'll give you an example that came up for me just a couple of days ago in another state. Imagine a square district. From the district, if there are any 1950s sci-fi fans out there, you may know what I'm talking about. Stretching, almost looking like robot arms, 3 thin arms, tendrils coming out of this square district into 2 other districts, adjoining districts. These districts have about 30% Black population. The square district has about 65% Black population. What do you think these arms are reaching for? They're reaching for minority populations to pull them into this square district, to create 2 adjoining districts that have low minority population, where the minority group cannot elect whom they want because there's significant racially polarized voting. The incumbent legislator in the square district wins re-election with 97% of the vote. So what does that tell us? That this district that's reaching out to grab people of color from adjoining districts, they're doing that to pack a district, to have such a high minority population there that similar groups cannot elect people in adjoining districts whom they want. Instead, they have an incumbent who gets almost 100% of the vote in a contested election. So I see that a lot. That's a big issue nationally. But I think that the issue of the Voting Rights Act and racially polarized voting analysis or racial block voting analysis, which are really quite significant or required for Voting Rights Act compliance, covers the entire country, no matter where you live. These are requirements that you need to follow, you need to abide by, and need to be aware that racially polarized voting, meaning that people of different races choose different candidates, is not an unusual thing. It's true in virtually, if not in, not virtually, true in every place where I've worked, both now and when I was with the Department of Justice. But that's an integral part of redistricting, to be able to see do an analysis, see the percentages of people that should be included in various districts. All of that these are all significant aspects of redistricting, but these are also things that people generally don't appreciate and don't fully grasp the significance, no matter where you are, in Maryland, Iowa, Maine, Arizona, Mississippi, doesn't matter. Requirements are the same. There is racially polarized voting, most likely in all of those places. And figuring out the numbers of people to put in districts, essentially so you don't discriminate against them. So you fulfill the requirements of the US Constitution's equal protection guarantees, and also the Voting Rights Act in general. And one other point, just as kind of an initial emphasis. The Department of Justice a couple of weeks ago put out its first ever guidance for redistricting on Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. I know my former colleagues never do things by accident, there's always a purpose or reason. I think the reason they did it is to give people a heads up that, these are the laws of redistricting under the Voting Rights Act. We're going to pay attention. We're going to be watching, but this is also something you need to follow as you move ahead with your process. So that's just a quick overview of redistricting. And remember, please, that race is not only it should not only be part of redistricting, it's required because of our population, our demographics. The census revealing that populations of color are higher in general in the United States than ever before. And I think the 2020 census is remarkable because for the first time in US history, the white population declined. That has never happened before. That's a tremendous development. So, that's what I would say, just as an initial part of redistricting. And again, I very much appreciate everybody's indulgence of me today and your patience. But Jackie, those are just some good introductory thoughts and ideas about redistricting that I wanted to put out there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Bruce. Max, did we get any additional questions?
Well, we did have one person asking whether Bruce is speaking while driving a car. Bruce, do you want to clarify that?
I am not driving. If I were driving, that's one of the rules in our house. I am sitting in a car.
Right.
Because I just finished a meeting here in Michigan, and I'm not at any office. So in order to maintain some level of quiet, this is the best place to go.
Yeah, makes sense. And I actually did have to take a meeting as well in my car at one point, so I sympathize the position that you're in.
Thank you.
Yeah, but actually, so far we haven't had any other questions come in. So
Good.
Actually, we just had one. Unless you want to ask one first, Jackie.
Yeah, I was just wondering if Bruce could tell us a little bit about more specifically how things are going in Michigan. It happens to be my home state. So that's how I found Bruce, by reading Bridge, Michigan, and saw that he was from Maryland and even from Montgomery County, which is how I pounced on Bruce as an expert. So Bruce, I am curious if there's anything interesting happening in Michigan and how you might compare that with anything you've heard about here in Maryland.
Well, that's a good point, Jackie. And I think that, Michigan has for the first time a statewide independent redistricting commission, which is always a very significant development. Michigan, like other states, has experienced a drop in the white population and an increase in the minority population. The white population in Michigan statewide is about 75%. So that's almost 20% higher than in Maryland, for example. So I think that the commission here is moving forward with their mapping and various decisions that are going to be made. But before this, the legislature had done the last few redistricting cycles of mapping. So this is a new experience for people. And I think that nationally, that the whole redistricting commission experience, which I am heavily involved in with redistricting commissions all across the country, is a very significant effort to democratize the process, bring the process closer to the voters, to the people. But all of that being said, redistricting is a legal process. It is governed by very specific rules, laws, court decisions. There are a lot of aspects to it. And whether it's Montgomery County, Maryland, or Genesee County, Michigan, the issue of racially polarized voting, the issue of compliance with the Voting Rights Act, not diluting minority populations by packing them, for example. All of these are very important considerations, so that while redistricting often includes issues about compactness and communities of interest, which is a big issue here, it all comes back to the Voting Rights Act and one person, one vote. Also, equal protection of the laws, not discriminating against people because of their race, their color, their national origin, or their membership in a minority language group. So Montgomery County, for example, is the only county in the Washington, D.C. area that is required by the Voting Rights Act to provide election and voting materials in Spanish, in another language. No other county is required to do that. So that's, I think, a really good kind of metaphor, if you will, for inclusion of many different people from many different backgrounds in the redistricting process.
Okay, good. Max, I think we do have a couple more questions.
Yes, we do. So first up, Bruce, someone is asking, what are some of the best practices for engaging minorities in the redistricting process?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. And I had a conversation with the Redistricting Commission in California about this last week. One of them is providing information in different languages. Also for people with communication disabilities, providing information in sign language and in Braille. Also doing things in a culturally appropriate way. I teach implicit bias and cultural awareness at Georgetown Medical School and University of Pittsburgh Law School. So these are topics that I talk to my students about all the time, looking at all of this as being extremely inclusive, because it's at the very heart. This is the very heart of democracy, I guess, if you will, and includes all of us in the process of deciding the lines by which we elect public officials, for whom to officials for whom we vote. So I would start with that language piece, disability access, and also being culturally aware to reach as many people as possible. Okay,
great. Next up, someone asks, is that DOJ guidance that you talked about in the beginning posted online anywhere for people to check out for themselves?
Yeah, it's on the DOJ website. And if anybody's interested, you can always email me. I'd be happy to send it to you, because I've sent it to a lot of people around the country. But it is on the DOJ's website. If you go to the Civil Rights Division's homepage at DOJ, there was a press release 2-3 weeks ago, I think, that highlighted this. And as I said, if you have trouble finding it, please email me. I'd be happy to send it to you.
Great, thank you for that answer. Next up, someone has a question about Michigan. Just curious if the Upper Peninsula population lends itself to being a full district at all levels, or does it require some to be connected by the bridge?
Well, that's also a great question, because it really speaks to one of the realities of redistricting. Rural populations, rural areas tend to be low in population. So in order to achieve the ideal population you need for one person, one vote in a congressional district, legislative districts, county commission districts, sometimes if you're in an area where there's a significant rural population, you have to cross several different counties to obtain enough people to fill up a district. So the UP, the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, is a very rural area. They've lost population. So typically a district would have to encompass a wide area, perhaps beyond the UP, to have enough people in it to satisfy one person, one vote.
Yes, and I'm sure that that leads to some very interesting maps to satisfy that requirement. Great, thank you for that. Next up, someone is wondering, what triggers that requirement for Spanish language materials to be made and provided? Is there a specific threshold for that?
Yeah, there is. I think it's a 5% literacy threshold. The next, this is under section 203 of the Voting Rights Act. The next determination, I think, is scheduled for the end of this year. One of our thoughts when the current Spanish language requirements came out, I think 5 or 6 years ago, there was some thought at the time that this might cover Arlington County in Virginia, perhaps one other county in Maryland. So it was somewhat of a surprise for those of us who follow federal regulations and things like that, that only one county in the DC area was covered. Hard to say whether others will be during the next determination at the end of the year, but it is based on literacy, English literacy, because the population that's being covered or protected are called limited English proficient people, or LEP. The section 203 is designed to prevent discrimination against people just because of inability to speak or write English. So right now, Montgomery County is the only place. And I remember this came up during my DOJ career, and we had some interesting discussions, I'll leave it at that, with Montgomery County at the time about these new requirements.
Okay, thank you for that. Next up, if the current map is highly gerrymandered, do you toss it out and start over from scratch?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by gerrymandered. I mean, typically there are two types of gerrymander. Racial gerrymander, like, remember the example I gave you of the robot arms coming out of that square district? That looks like a racial gerrymander. A partisan gerrymander is basically the same thing, packing people of one particular political persuasion or affiliation with the political party in large numbers in one district. The problem is that under federal law, excuse me, you can't sue to overturn partisan gerrymanders. The Supreme Court said a few years ago, that's impossible. The US Constitution does not prohibit that. Racial gerrymanders, on the other hand, are prohibited by the US Constitution, the 14th Amendment. So typically, if there is some kind of challenge to a district based on a racial gerrymander, of course, that has to work its way through the courts. I'm quite persuasive with the jurisdictions that I work with about racial gerrymanders. So certainly I've never signed off on a racial gerrymander, and I'm not planning to do that anytime soon. So, but the relief is you go to court if the redistricting body creates a gerrymander, to get a court to agree that a gerrymander exists, toss out an illegal gerrymander, toss out the redistricting plan, and either order the redistricting organization to create a new plan, or sometimes the court just does it on its own and then imposes it.
Great, and we thank you for your legal work on that matter as well. So going off of that, someone asked, do you have any opinion on Maryland having 2 redistricting committees? And do you have an opinion on gerrymandering done in the state in general in the past?
Well, I think as many people know, our current congressional map is gerrymandered. I think that objectively, there's really no doubt about that. That's a partisan gerrymander, that people of particular partisan affiliations being grouped together in a way that benefits the majority party by registration in the state. Now, again, partisan gerrymanders are not illegal under federal law. There was a lawsuit challenging redistricting in Maryland, and that the Supreme Court basically tossed that out, said partisan gerrymanders are okay under the US Constitution. Racial gerrymanders, as I said, are different. I don't know that I don't know the districts well enough to give an opinion on whether I think they're racially gerrymandered, but I also don't know, for example, at the county level, city council level, whether there are any gerrymandered issues in them. I know that our state does have 2 redistricting commissions, but in many states, like New York and Pennsylvania are examples. The redistricting commission is not a truly independent body. The legislature, the governor could overturn or just ignore the results of whatever the redistricting commission comes up with, and then just go our own way and come up with what the governor wants or what the legislature wants. So I don't know that in Maryland, the redistricting commissions are mandatory. I don't think they're mandatory in that the governor and the legislature are legally required to basically do nothing. And the redistricting commissions are the power. That's true in Michigan. The redistricting commission here is the last word on redistricting. The governor and the legislature play no role. I don't think that's true in Maryland, at least at the state level.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's my impression as well. Next up, we have probably a bit of a more complicated question here. So this person says, my understanding is that the Supreme Court has seriously curtailed the Voting Rights Act. What legal protections are there for citizens of states and counties who don't want to encourage fair representation?
Well, the Supreme Court decision on what was called the Brnovich case earlier this year really dealt with a part of the Voting Rights Act that in many respects is separate from redistricting. The main part of the Voting Rights Act that deals with redistricting is Section 2. And the concept is called vote dilution, where you are discriminating against people by packing them or cracking them, dividing them, or just dumping large numbers of voters, as has been alleged in many states, because of race into a small number of districts. The decision in the Brnovich case had nothing to do with that. So while I recognize that that was a significant decision and will have some significant implications going forward on the Voting Rights Act, it really didn't address the primary part of the law that deals with redistricting, that vote dilution prong, I guess, or portion of Section 2. That's still very much alive, and the Supreme Court didn't touch that. How the Supreme Court decision plays out concerning, let's say, not having changing early voting hours, or requiring voter ID and having restrictive policies about ID, having not putting polling places in parts of a jurisdiction, parts of the city or a county that have large populations of color, for example. Those are the types of actions that the Brnovich decision really spoke to. How that plays out, frankly, we're not going to really know until next year as we approach and go through the mid-year elections, and then also in 2024 when we have the next presidential election.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that answer. And then finally, someone wants to know, does the Voting Rights Act prohibit consideration of party affiliation when drawing districts?
No. The Voting Rights Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin / language, membership in minority language group. The Voting Rights Act has nothing to do with partisanship as a protected class, religion, disability. It's only those 3 areas. So partisanship by itself is not prohibited under federal law. If partisanship gets combined with or freighted with issues of race and color, that's a different situation. But please remember that the Supreme Court of the United States decided, I think 3 years ago, that having a partisan gerrymander is not unconstitutional. It is not prohibited by federal law. It may be prohibited by individual states, although I'm not aware of that offhand. But under federal law, people can partisan gerrymander to their heart's content in a way, because partisanship is just not considered what's called a protected category that prohibits discrimination under federal law. Not partisanship, race, yes, but not partisanship or partisan affiliation.
Great, thank you. That's pretty much all the time we have for Q&A tonight. I will turn the program back over to our moderator now.
Okay, thank you very much, Max and Bruce. I will just take a last 30 seconds to note that all these questions about partisan gerrymandering, if the new Freedom to Vote Act manages to pass in Congress and get enacted into law, that would outlaw partisan gerrymandering. And so that's another reason that the League of Women Voters is very much in favor of and trying our best to lobby for the Freedom to Vote Act. So if you have friends and family in places like, oh, I don't know, West Virginia or Arizona, and you wanted to encourage them to contact their senators and get them to do the right thing, that might make a difference. Otherwise, we're stuck with partisan gerrymandering for, quite a long time. Okay, well, thank you so much, both MARIANA, Bruce, Max, and all of our participants today. Just one last reminder, if you want to contact the League here in Montgomery County, we are at LWVMOCOMD. LWVMOCOMD.org. And thank you everybody so much. And we'll have a new trending topic next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.